Well, hello and welcome to this week's episode here on the Saga Classic Car Restoration YouTube channel. And this week, as you can guess, we're back at the Land Rover. And it's the time we've been waiting for. I've been talking about it for months. I really wanted to get the rear suspension sorted here on the 1976 Land Rover Series 3 88-inch. The back springs have been sagging, most especially this side, as the wheel is too far up into the wheel well. And looking underneath, the springs are flat and nearly going back on themselves. Now, these springs were bought 10 years ago when I restored this Land Rover. It hasn't had a huge number of miles, it's not my daily driver, so the springs shouldn't really have gone flat, but I don't know what make they were. They might have been cheap, imported products, I don't really know. But this time, I've invested in some nice UK-made leaf springs, so I'm going to show you the springs, and then we're going to get stuck into dismantling the rear end and getting the process started for giving the rear suspension quite the makeover here on the Land Rover. So without any further ado, let's show you those springs and get stuck in. And there we have them, two lovely new rear leaf springs. Now, immediately you may be able to notice that the bottom one has slightly more camber or curve than the top one. And that's because the springs are handed. This is the driver's side one and this is the passenger side one. The driver's side one I feel has more of a curve because on this side you have a driver, a fuel tank and a battery. So there's definitely more weight on the right hand side of the vehicle than on the left hand side of the vehicle, especially in this right hand drive model. This is how they come supplied. They don't come with any lubricant. They are leaf springs. They are painted, although that's got scratched in transit, but that's okay. And they come ready fitted with some of the original style sort of steel tube, rubber inner steel tube bushes. Let's have a look at those. Now, rubber nowadays I don't feel is as good quality as the original type rubber. It dozes in no time, cracks, and then you're left with a lot of slop as the inner tube moves around inside the rubber bushing. So what I plan to do is to knock these new bushes out and put polyurethane ones in. I'm going to buy a complete set for the entirety of the Land Rover. So that's both ends of the spring eye and also in the back of the chassis here. These were originally fitted with poly bushes, but I think I'll just renew the whole set. Also, while I have you here and the wheels are off and it's still the weight of the vehicle on the springs and the axles, I'll show you the main problem. Look at the state of that spring. The leaves are splayed out here and it's nearly bent that way rather than the parabola going down way. So very obviously sagging in those springs, and you can see also from the angle of the shackle bushes how much the side of the vehicle has sunk. Otherwise under here it seems okay. Shock absorber is nice and dry, no obvious leaks there. Obviously no chassis rust because this is a galvanized chassis. Nice new stainless exhaust that was fitted last year. Rusting metal pipe on a stainless exhaust. I've emailed Barmac this week and they're going to send me a new one, very good of them. Otherwise nothing strange or startling under here. Let's have a look around the other side. So looking here, very much a similar story. The leaves are quite rusty. The shackle is hanging at quite an acute angle and there's some splaying of the leaves too. And with all these things, it's always better to replace suspension bushes and things in pairs. So what I'm going to do next is take the weight off the axle and put it on these jack stands at the back, and then start working away at getting the axle detached and go from there. We'll have a wee look. Those bushes here in the spring eye also look pretty saggy and nasty, and the same here. The bolt's not really sitting perpendicular through the spring, so lots to look out for whenever I get this off, and we can all have a laugh at the original bushes at just how nasty they've gotten in a very short space of time. And there we have it. The back wheels are off, the weight is off the springs, and the back end of the Land Rover is being supported on two jack stands which are underneath the rear cross member. The front is also on jack stands as well, so all nice and secure. I'm very happy and quite content to work underneath this. Might also put two jack stands just in front of the rear axles just so they're not getting in the way, but also just for a little piece of added security and feel safe. So as you can see, and I mentioned in the last video where I talked about servicing the Land Rover, I have painted the rear diff pan, and to be honest, once I have the springs off, I'm going to disconnect everything and take the back axle out completely and give it just a repaint and a refresh. Also needs a new gasket between the differential and the axle casing. These springs really did make some horrible noises when they're coming down out of their flexed or flattened point down into their resting curve. So lots of rust, lots between the leaves, just generally they weren't working. Won't be surprised if the shock absorbers don't enjoy being fully extended like this. I'm quite intrigued as to what this stain is here. I'm wondering, is there diesel maybe making its way out from somewhere? I can't really see how. I've never found a leak. So that might need a little bit of investigation. I'm also going to degrease the chassis here and probably give it a little coat of paint. I did mention before that this chassis, galvanized chassis, has been on the vehicle for probably in and around 20 years. And at the end of the day, galvanized chassis is not lifelong. It will eventually rust, so why not take the steps to prevent that and protect it now. So first things first, going to take the check straps off both sides. I'm going to disconnect the prop shaft. Just at the rear end, we'll probably cable tie it up underneath the floor. And then what I'm going to do is disconnect the axle at the back and lower it down with the jack. Then disconnect it at the front, just so the weight, well, so probably support it while I disconnect both ends. Lower it down and then pull it out from underneath the vehicle, and then take the springs off it while it's out from underneath. So let's get some bits and pieces disconnected and we'll carry on from there. Just noticing this wire is a bit tenuous looking there as well, so probably that needs attached. Do a few wee little jobs while I'm here. Why not? There we go. That didn't take too long. That's one side quite successfully sorted. I've got the check strap detached. Those nuts were quite well stuck, but then they seem to be fairly well coated in soil. The top of the shock absorber came off, and actually the shock absorber is in really good nick, good resistance throughout its range of travel and no leaks. So win for the Britpart shock absorber. That was a pleasant surprise. The prop shaft, as you can see, has been disconnected from the axle end, and I'm going to cable tie that up to the chassis, keep it out of the way without having to disconnect it at the front. For the prop shaft, I used this handy little prop shaft tool. I can't actually remember who made it, but I do think they're quite widely available. And if you just Google Land Rover prop shaft tool or put it into eBay, you can get one of those. Very handy. Also going to have a look and see which of these bolts can be replaced with stainless steel. If you're following my Toylander build series, you will know that I'm quite a fan of stainless steel fixings where appropriate. Obviously you need high tensile at some point, but stainless steel where appropriate is always good, and it saves a lot of work in the disassembly. Also a big fan of copper grease, and I'd use that on the prop shaft whenever I'd put it in. Hadn't used it on the shock absorber, and really the difference is quite noticeable. So check strap is probably going to get stainless bolts throughout. See if I can find a stainless bolt for the shock absorber, and the prop shaft bolts are all quite usable because I did those fairly recently. So let's move on to the other side and then disconnect the brakes. Just the single tube or the single brake flexi pipe coming into the T-junction there, and then the back axle will be ready to drop down. Moving quite nicely. Okie doke, so moving on to this side, I have the prop shaft now cable tied up to the chassis, well out of harm's way. Same again, shock absorber top bolt, move it down out of the way, and take the check strap off, and then the brake T-piece, which is just on the other side of the differential housing, is going to need disconnected before I can put the jack underneath the differential housing, loosen the back shackles off, and then gently lower the back onto the ground, and then lower the front onto the ground, and then pull this very heavy lump of metal out of the chassis or over to that side. Good news from Bermac today is that they are very kindly going to send me a replacement stainless steel middle section for the exhaust. So top marks to Bermac for their customer service as ever. Let's get on with this side. And just as an aside before I go any further, this is an interesting demonstration of a stainless bolt versus a non-stainless bolt. Obviously both fitted at the same time, and one is rusted quite badly and the other one is very usable. Don't know how I managed to not put a bolt in that side, but hey ho. Another interesting thing when I'm taking these off, I thought that these had been stainless, but they're quite obviously not, so those are going to get replaced. Probably going to replace these bump stops as well because they're pretty crusty. Although the rubber's in good nick, I'm in here, I might as well get them done. Other problem I've noticed on the other side of the floor of the tub, I'm going to show you in a little second, but otherwise in here this tub is in pretty good nick. hasn't been dented, not overly corroded. There's a little bit of a hump here, so I can maybe put a jack underneath that just to straighten it up a little bit. But let's have a look at that problem on the other side before we go any further. And here we are back on the driver's side, and you maybe noticed my problem straight off. You might have noticed it even before now, but the cross members underneath this floor have all completely popped out. Those are riveted in by myself, and they've all popped out. They are attached on the other side, but that's really not too good. That floor is barely supported, if at all. So that's definitely going to need looked at. I know I'd maybe pointed this out about a year ago when they were still attached, but it's completely gone now. So given you maybe can't see it all that well, but the middle aluminium cross members are also sort of a bit crusty. So I think it's maybe worthwhile taking the entire floor panel out and getting a new replacement. I know they are available, so I think it's probably time to look into that, certainly while I've gone in this far. It's always funny how these jobs turn into 3 new ones, isn't it? But let's get this axle detached and we'll go from there. And now that I have the other side disconnected, this is my setup for removing the axle. So I have my low entry Halfords jack. It's a great job. It's underneath the differential, just taking slightly the weight off the springs, not trying to lift the vehicle, just taking the weight off. And now I'm going to loosen the shackles on the back and then work on the front, and it should come out quite nicely. So I'll catch up with you once that I've got the back disconnected, just to check in that it's all working out the way I've planned. So as the appearance of the rattle gun would suggest, these shackle bolts, both front and rear of the springs, have been pretty ignorant to try and get out. Interestingly, that bushing there doesn't appear too bad. And to be honest, neither does this one, but certainly the front ones do. And we're replacing the springs. I really don't want to be back here anytime soon, so I'm still sticking with my polyurethane idea. That side is disconnected at the rear, and I just have one more to do here. The weight is still taken by the jack in the middle, so let's get that last one undone and move this axle out of the way. And no, I still have not disconnected the brakes. That's next. So the last bolt put up a little bit of a fight, but I won. And now the entire rear braking system is deciding to drain its brake fluid out through this union. I thought I was going to be able to disconnect it here and cap it off, but the braided hose didn't really want to twist, which I suppose is its purpose. So I'm just going to have to resort to this, but that's okay. I was sort of hoping to change all the brake fluid to silicone anyway, so good excuse to do that job while I'm here. Although it can be a bit messy. There's definitely something missing here, and of course it's the back axle. And to be fair, looking at the colour of that brake fluid, it really needed changed. So, ta-da! Back axle intact with springs, recently painted diff, brakes disconnected, drums and all on. My jack has certainly had a workout today. My little technique for removing it worked quite well. Quite a lot of rust. Really, and the paint that I originally put on has really not lasted all that well. I've put it up on axle stands here to try and save my recently painted garage floor, and there was a video done on that, so if you feel like watching it, it's there on the channel, although I've managed to make a big score across it, so that's a little bit annoying. So I think in terms of mechanical work today, that'll do me. Next step really is to take the U-bolts off, get the old springs off, get these plates, get them ground down and painted in some rust, or probably de-rusted and then painted. Probably going to strip the brakes out, give everything a good coat of paint. I'm not going to take the back plates off. Just give everything a real good coat of paint after it's been degreased. The other thing that's annoying is pretty sure that the gasket around here is leaking, so put lots of nice new oil in it. Really don't want to waste it, so if I can flip the axle sort of nose up, lift the diff out, put a new gasket on, I think that would be quite good. That's going to involve taking the drive shafts out, which means new pinion gaskets as well. Not a huge expense, but I don't hold them in stock, so have to order those, degrease everything, give it a nice coat of paint, and it'll be nice and presentable. I think, given the difficulty of getting those bolts off, I'm going to order new 9-lock nuts. I don't think the bolts need replaced, and probably nice new 9-locks for the shock absorbers as well. And give the brake pipes a bit of a clean up, and then the brakes are going to need rebled, everybody's favourite job. So really made some progress today, quite pleased with that. Now this is going to sit in the middle of the garage and block the road for a little while yet, but progress nonetheless. Oh yes, and how could I forget? Diff pinion oil seal definitely needs changed. It's leaking, it's out, it's easily accessible, time to get that done. And so there you have it, episode 1 of the rear suspension rebuild on my 1976 Land Rover Series 3 88-inch diesel. That was 2 afternoons work just to get the axle out. It's sitting down here just out of shot, as I'm sure you can guess. And I'm quite pleased, it's made quite an impact. There's obviously a big hole now underneath the Land Rover, but it's created a lot of space to do a few more jobs that I have been hoping to do anyway. I'm really hoping this doesn't turn into a full strip down and find a lot of problems. I'm going to try and keep the cost minimum but quality high. Pretty much what I do across this channel anyway. I'm going to try and get as many stainless steel fixings in there where appropriate. Obviously if I need high tensile fixings, that's not going to be appropriate. The axle's going to get a coat of paint, new springs are going in, polyurethane bushes. Try and do as many jobs while I'm in there as I can without making an awful mess. I'm also going to try and fix a few leaks as well, as I'm sure you've guessed. I don't really like the leaks and they make a mess of my nice new garage floor. So once again, thanks very much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you stay with me throughout this build process and the rear end fix up. Please hit the subscribe button down below there, and also the bell icon, and you'll get all the notifications when I make a new video. Fire me a little comment, any suggestions, compliments, comments, even criticism if it's constructive. I am more than welcome it, and I'm happy to hear from you all. So once again, thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you again next week. Cheerio!